welcome. Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights here with Rich Klein. We're going to talk about sales tax, the implications for everybody unless you live in Oregon. But if you're at a card show or a card store, the government wants a piece of retail transactions. Now, obviously, if it's a sales tax permit to resell, that's another can of worms. But Rich and I are going to discuss this after we thank our sponsors, which is Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Hugs and Scott Auctions, Topps, Upper Deck, and Panini. Really, Rich, all businesses, if they sell stuff retail, in almost every locale, they've got state and sometimes local sales tax that they have to report, subject to being audited and penalized. And I think your point was there's not an even playing field, but there should be, and there's supposed to be. What's your perspective on this?
This actually started because one of my hobby friends, and I won't mention by name, except his son and I share the same birthday. And he sent me this DM on Facebook. Do you know they're even charging tax to purchase a ticket for an autograph? This is the Dallas Card Show.
Yeah.
I'm having to pay the taxes for either DCS or the auto promoter. No other dealer in any show in the US I've ever been to has ever made me pay tax for an autograph ticket. Then he complains about Kyle thinking it's unscrupulous. And I try to explain, no, as a matter of fact, that's the last thing from being unscrupulous. Normally, most promoters absorb the cost of tax in anything they sell.
No, I would say promoters, they don't even, it's like a cash transaction.
Yes.
That's difficult to audit. But Kyle is at the size now and the prominence to where he could easily be audited, and then they could start claiming back sales tax with penalties and interest. So it's in his best interest. And I agree, it's not fair when one person complies and one person doesn't. Even the show dealers, Rich, if they don't charge sales tax, if they sold a $10 item, then in reality, that was a $9.25 item with 75 cents of sales tax. And they need to send 75 cents to Austin, Texas. And if you don't, some shows they've come around with some sales tax assessments. Some states
most
are more aggressive.
Most of the nationals nowadays, you just fill out your state sales tax form when you sign up for your table. It's part of the deal now. You just fill out the form immediately. It's almost like you have to do this anyway.
But your dealer that was complaining, the complaint should come from the consumer.
He was a consumer, by the way.
So if you're a consumer, then you say, I don't want to pay an extra 8%, but it's legal. You're supposed to. If you don't, unless it's not reported. And if it's not reported, they're not the one that would get in trouble. It's the dealer, it's the organizer. I don't think it's the player on an autograph thing.
No, the player has to pay income tax. And we've had enough instances of players getting penalized and getting severe, up to, I believe, a little bit of jail time for not mentioning income from show appearances.
From card shows.
So that's income for them, unless they're sitting at a table and selling their stuff. And there have been some players over the years who have sat at tables and sold their stuff. They're not sales tax, they're federal income tax. I always explain to somebody, and my argument used to be for some of these players when I had guests, if I pay you $1,000, you're going to get a 1099. If you're in the 40%, you're only going to get $600 and you still have to declare this. If I pay you $550, you're getting $550. Because it's less than 600 from me and you don't have to declare it. And some of the players said, I want more money. Other players said, wait a second, 550? And I don't have to tell Mrs. But nope, you can go to the bank and cash that check and nobody knows about it legally. Morally is a different subject, but legally you don't have to say anything.
No, you have an obligation now to report. It's like a 1099, and eBay and ComC has to do that. And the standard for 2024 is $5,000. I think the next year it's going to be $2,500, and then the following year it's going to be the threatened $600, which would incorporate an awful lot of people. And so if you were paying a show guest $601 in 2026 to come to your show and sign autographs, the onus is on you first to send that out. Then
Yes.
the onus is on the player to report it, and they're going to really report it, because if you send them a 1099, the original or whatever copy goes to the person and a copy goes to the government. So they know that person got it. Then you have to report it. Then the person can deduct some expenses and all that. People are going to tighten up. And the whole thing about this is that the government never goes backwards, it seems like, and they want to reduce taxes. But can you imagine that sales tax will be reduced? I
No,
don't,
never.
I imagine it's going to go up. And so this problem we're talking about now, I think it's 8 point something in Texas now. I have no idea how Oregon does it, but the taxes in Texas in a few years could be 10% sales tax. Not that 8%, 10% are that far off. It's just the boiling frog. They're going to keep raising it. State of New York and New Jersey, don't they have?
Oh, yeah. I was paying at one point sales tax, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut before I moved down. And every time we talk about sales tax and stuff like that, I always think about the Temptations line from Ball of Confusion. That's still true 55 years later. Politicians say more taxes will solve everything. If you listen to the lyrics of that song 55 years later, a lot of it is just as true in 2025 as it was in 1970.
We both know more taxes or less taxes. I just want fair taxes, and I want the tax money to be applied in a way that's meaningful and helps people and doesn't get stuck in bureaucracy.
I understand my friend's frustration with the autograph ticket price, but I also understand Kyle or the people who are bringing in the autograph guests from them about wanting to charge the sales tax. And I don't have a real problem with that on that level. For example, I don't know all the corporates in and out, but I know the minute that Supreme Court decision came out about all the sales tax being charged, Tim and the team, as quickly as possible, created the system to collect sales tax for all the localities. And you're on eBay, and eBay does the same thing for you. You don't have to worry about figuring out how to do 50 sales tax. eBay's taking care of that for you.
Okay. I did that episode a long time ago about what if Donald Trump was a collector? What would he do different? And basically, he's real big on not taxing tips. So why can't this just be like a tip? The players don't have to pay tax on just signing their names. So here's how you do it. You go up to Bob Lilly and you say, Mr. Lilly, can I buy a hot dog from you for $1, and then I can give you a $20 tip, and will you sign my photo? And if he says sure, then he's got $1 for the hot dog, which is the cost, and he's got a $20 tip that President Trump is saying that maybe he won't have to pay taxes on tip income. So
I think you've actually, I know we try not to talk politics, but I think you actually hit on something here, which could be a hidden consequence of that no tax on tips, where people may lower
the price and increase the wink wink tip.
Yes, exactly. So the employer can actually save money by paying less to his employees and saying, oh, you'll make it up on your tips.
The employer sometimes gets the short end. I had a buddy that was in college with me that was a waiter at a restaurant, and he was famous for bringing extra food to the table of his friends at no cost. He would maybe go in the kitchen and say that the drink spilled or the food wasn't cooked right. So then when you tipped him, you would tip based on the food that you actually got, and your bill was understated. I'm not advocating playing games. I'm just saying games can be played. And your friend that's complaining about taxes on autographs, the same tax rate is supposed to be paid on any card show sales in the state. And that's almost all of them. They're not collecting them.
I read a letter in the Dallas Morning News recently about somebody complaining about they go through. In fact, there's a new barbecue place that just opened in this Waters Creek shopping center. I said, oh, it opened today. Let me go there. I wasn't going to eat lunch. I said, wait a second, it's payday Friday. I always go out to lunch. Let me go there. Sure enough, it's one of these places that if you pay by card, it'll give you how much do you want for the tip. And I saw a letter in the morning news about this guy really complaining. I'm thinking, dude, the simplest way to answer that is go to the ATM, bring cash, bring the cash with you, and then they have to hand you change, and then they can't ask you what type of tip you want to leave. And I'm always wondering why.
And it's possible that the server has a better chance of getting the money if it's cash.
Oh, yeah. In fact, Audrey Gold, God rest her soul, told me more than 30 years ago, we were out at dinner in San Francisco, and she says, I always leave my tips in cash. And unless I don't have any cash in my pocket, I try to make sure anytime I go to a restaurant to leave a tip, it's in cash.
But you realize in our lifetime, I think, because I'm projecting we're going to live a lot longer. So let's just say that we're going to live a long time.
If I can live as long as your mom and your dad, that gives me
we're going to do the best we can. But my point is, in our lifetime, it's possible that cash will be, I don't think it's going to be eliminated, but already if you go to the Mavs game, you cannot pay cash. You cannot buy a soda. You can't buy a beer. You can't buy peanuts. with cash. It has to be credit card.
The
And
same
so-
is true for the Rangers, and the same is true for the Frisco Rough Riders.
Okay, but what if the same were true for the Waters Creek show 6 times a year that Kyle has, that the dealers would only take credit card? And I'm not even talking about checks. Occasionally I'll do a check. I don't like doing credit card for that kind of stuff. But if they did,
And if you think about that, it actually makes more sense for the government, because then
they'd
there's
be able to capture it.
yeah, they can capture every sale.
Exactly. And the other thing is, when we're moving toward a more dominant fanatics role in the hobby, wanting a slice of everything, what better way to do that than to make it be by credit cards, which I think most of their business probably is on credit.
And Fanatics is very big on knowing where the point of sale is, knowing how stores are doing business.
And getting a slice.
It's going to happen.
It's moving that way. I love being able to just pull out some cash. And you know me, it's not a big wad of cash, but it's enough to where if I buy $100 worth of dollar box cards, I don't want to write a check. I don't want to whip out my credit card. I just want to give the guy a $100 bill. And like I said, I don't carry so much that I'm worried about being accosted. But I think there's friction, and all of a sudden now you're giving over your credit card number in a sense. You're giving over your identification. There's skimmers, things like that. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. Whereas cash, just give them the cash and walk away and say thank you.
And yet there are some advantages. I got a bill in the email from LabCorp about something. It detailed, after working with your insurance company, this is what you owed us. And I went this morning to their website. They had the details to the day of when they did the thing. And I got in a bill as well. So I knew it was dead on. And I just gave them my information and said, okay, this is easy enough. It's done. And probably in future thing, they'll have that number saved. That's okay. Do you want to use this to pay again?
We really want to extend that kind of trust within the whole hobby.
I don't know. I was comfortable with LabCorp.
I'm saying is, if you're walking up to a dealer and he says, I'll take your credit card, but I'm not taking your cash. First of all, I don't think that's necessarily illegal. They've told me it's not illegal for somebody to say, I'm not accepting cash for this purchase. They have to accept it from a debt. It's legal tender, but they don't have to exchange their cards for your greenbacks if they don't want to, or coins. I've got a bunch of coins too, but I just think the cash aspect of the hobby is part of the charm and the allure. And I don't want to encourage people to try to beat the government and not pay taxes. But in the current state, it's very easy to do that. I think most dealers are not charging sales tax and hence not forwarding on. Some of them may not even be paying income tax, and they should. This is not saying don't do it. I've been doing it, and it's actually therapeutic because I sleep better. I'm not worried about getting rousted out of bed in the middle of the night by the IRS police. I pay my taxes. The problem could be if you pay no taxes. If you completely blow them off, that I think makes them madder than if you underreport, because they have a hard time reconstructing. But if you went to a whole bunch of shows, had booths at all 6 of Kyle's shows, to say that you had no income or no revenue is not very believable.
Except back in the day, some people, I think Seth Popple would bring high school yearbooks with him, not for sale, but to try to get other people, oh, I've got a high school yearbook.
Okay, right, okay.
And he wasn't trying, if he made a sale, great. But his point was trying to get them so he could sell them, mail order, auction, whatever. So there are people who will do things like that to try to buy things, and they don't care if they don't sell anything because they want to use the show as the opportunity to buy.
Yeah,
you can't actually have tables just for we'll call it the purpose of display, or hey, I'm looking for items like this. So that's
the exception, but it's noted. That's possible. But again, the thing the government has going for them is there are thousands of witnesses that walk by Seth's table and can affirm that. Whereas if they go by the Palmer's table, when they see him making change all day long, they can't say, oh, I was just increasing my inventory.